Care to guess who bought another Land Rover? Again.
I'm a rolling stone, bound to roam. Come the morning, or I'll be gone. Pouring rain, wanna hear that train. There she comes, won't you get on? Won't you get on board?
But buying another one right now doesn't really make sense since I've just replaced my old one with the 109. And I have been traveling with that and living in it since the end of the summer. However, a couple of weeks back I had to make a huge decision deciding on how I'm going to live for the next few months over the winter. Ever since the end of 2019 I've been living full-time in cars, but I haven't been traveling full-time. I've always had some sort of a base, for example my workplace. I've used the office as a place to store all of my things that I don't need on a daily basis, and also a place to edit my personal videos. But as of now, that company is out of business, and I needed to make a decision if I was going to start traveling full time with the 109. But with the temperatures dropping and winter creeping in, I realized it wasn't even prepared to do any traveling, at least not here in Norway. But nevertheless, I've been using the green one as my daily driver now for the last couple of months, and I've driven more than 10,000 kilometers with it. And it's doing surprisingly well, at least considering the age and the simpleness of it. And apart from a few minor upgrades to the installation, it's the very same simple car it used to be back at the start of the 80s. But what about the new car? Speaking of big decisions, I had to decide what I was going to do over the winter this year. I could travel north again, but it wouldn't really give me anything since the car is not really prepared for it, and I would just end up being somewhat miserable. I could once again cut all ties and drive somewhere warmer, but financially I would ruin myself and I wouldn't really even have a plan with the project. I could also decide to do something normal for a while and just rent an apartment and work and save money, but doing the obvious makes me a bit restless. Which is why I decided to do a whole mix of everything. Firstly, I needed a new base, a place to edit videos, a place to store all of my things, and also a place to just kick back if I needed to take a break from traveling for a while. I also needed a big new project, something to literally keep me busy while waiting for the winter to pass. And lastly, I wanted to do something that might actually be beneficial both financially and intellectually by learning everything I need to know about the car I'm going to travel with. And what better way is there to learn everything about a car than taking it apart and putting it back together? So I rented a very small garage to rebuild the car, but practically I couldn't rebuild the car that I was driving every day, the green one. And therefore I decided to get a second project so I could rebuild that, finish it off completely, and then swap them around and rebuild the green one, and then at the end of that, sell one of them. A friend of mine over at LPM Classic had just bought 5 Land Rovers over at the west coast, about 500 kilometers away from the new garage. And I ended up buying one of them as my new project, as well as assisting with collecting the cars. All of them has been parked up at this parking lot since somewhere around 2016. None of these has been started, moved, or really paid any attention to over these years. So we just started draining the fuel out of all of the cars, and the petrol in the one that I bought smelled rancid like vinegar, so I guess it was the right call. We also built a temporary and separate fuel system to bypass the original pumps. We also used that pump system to drain the fuel lines, minimizing the risk of sucking any debris into the carburetor, making a lot more work for ourselves. Especially me, since I was planning to drive the car all the way back home. Whilst the rest of the cars just needed to somewhat run, making it possible to collect them with a shipping company later on. Driving a rusty Land Rover from 1974 across the country does not really bother me, but driving any car across the country that has been parked for almost a decade makes it a bit more stressful. And instead of just winging it and creating a lot more problems for myself down the road, I decided that I was going to replace all the oils in the differentials, the overdrive, the gearbox, the transfer case, the engine, as soon as I could get the car to run. The Series 3 with the 2.25 petrol is an extremely simple car. And back in the days, people used to say that as long as you have spark, fuel and air, the car will most likely run. But with modern cars, there's so much more than these simple things. Which is why it feels so rewarding working on a Series, because it doesn't feel like you meet an impossible obstacle every time you do something on the car. After making sure that all the fuel was out of the car, I had to make sure that the car was actually getting a spark. But even though I came prepared with some simple parts for the ignition, I could not get it to run. First off, I replaced the coil with a second-hand one, but later on replaced it with a brand new one just to rule that out completely. I also replaced all of the spark plugs, but even though they were bad, I should be able to have at least some spark. But I had none. At the very beginning, I did set the clearance of the points, but this is a mechanical part and it was worn all the way down. If I'm going to describe it very simple, it's the one mechanical part making sure that electricity is delivered at the very right time to make a spark every time the engine needs to ignite fuel. So if this doesn't work, nothing else will work. And the only right thing to do here would be to replace it, but I didn't bring one and I couldn't find anyone local with one to spare. And the one on the car was so worn that I couldn't adjust it properly to get a spark through the system. But after fiddling and trying to start the car over and over and over, I finally got it just right, making me believe that I was actually going to be able to drive the car all the way back home. After fiddling around a bit more, I got it running as it should. Kinda. And I just had to make sure that I had brakes so I would be able to drive back home slow and steady and somewhat safe. And with that confirmed, I spent the next day replacing all of the oils in the car, preparing it to drive back to the garage. We loaded the last car up on a trailer and I was left alone at the other side of the country, but it didn't really matter because it wasn't really anything I needed to make it back in time for. So I took my time and made sure that everything was okay so I wouldn't screw up anything on the car on the drive back. We had already spent 2 solid days working on these cars and I was really stoked to actually drive my new car. And as I loaded up the final piece of gear in the back of the car, I was ready to finally set off. At least I thought so. But in a situation like this, there's basically 2 things you can do. You can scream and yell and get angry, with all of your work getting flushed down the drain. Or you can calmly check your work and realize that you didn't even connect the power to the fuel pump that you put there the day prior. Which is why you will hear the ticking sound of that pump right now.
Coffee in a paper cup. The engine starts right up. Clip myself into the middle seat. Daddy liked talk radio. On gravel he would drive real slow. He told me let's go see what we could see.
And I was finally driving off with my new project, with below zero and no working heater. And my big plan to film everything of this adventure as I drove back didn't really get documented at all because I literally spent the next 9 hours shivering inside of the car.
Song to me. would shake. The jet plane filled up all the space. The wheels went up and got so near. The leaves would fall like paper tears. My heart is high. Big open sky, fly Our ears still ringing with the sound. We were floating off the ground. I still feel it even now.